There's a place hidden deep in the mountains, a place where silence isn't peace, it's hunger. Winter Hollow. The name alone feels cold, doesn't it? Most people have never heard of it. And maybe that's for the best. But one woman had. Her name was Claire, an investigative journalist who built her career chasing after whispers, unsolved stories, and places that never wanted visitors. When a series of letters landed on her desk, unsigned, shaky handwriting, filled with strange warnings about voices in the dark, she couldn't resist. The letters spoke of a village where outsiders disappeared, where the night carried voices that didn't belong to the living, and where the lake never froze, even in the dead of winter. Claire packed her bags, a recorder, a notebook, and the kind of stubborn courage that always pushed her too far. She told no one where she was going, just boarded a train that crawled into the mountains, then another that rattled through valleys wrapped in snow. By the time she reached the nearest station, the sun had already slipped behind gray clouds. A single car waited on the icy road, an old driver. Silent. He nodded, and she climbed in. For 2 hours, neither of them spoke. The road twisted, narrow, bordered by endless trees dressed in white. When Claire finally asked, "Have you heard of Winter Hollow?" The man's hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't answer. Not right away. Finally, he muttered, "Don't stay there long." That was it. No explanation, no comfort. Just a warning, dropped like a stone into silence. By the time the car stopped, night had fallen. Claire stepped out into the biting cold, and there it was, Winter Hollow. A handful of houses scattered around a narrow main street. Smoke rising from crooked chimneys. Lanterns glowing dimly, their light swallowed by fog. At first glance, it looked normal, peaceful even. But Claire's instincts screamed otherwise. Something about the air, too still, too heavy, like the whole place was holding its breath. A woman greeted her at the inn, middle-aged, polite smile, hands red from the cold. "Room's ready," she said softly. "You're welcome to stay as long as you like." Her voice was kind, too kind, the kind that hides sharp edges. That night, Claire sat by the window of her small wooden room. She scribbled notes, recorded first impressions, and then, just as the clock struck midnight, she heard it. Faint at first. A murmur, a whisper threading through the walls. Not wind, not the creak of wood. Voices. Claire froze, leaning closer, straining to hear. Men, women, maybe children. The sound swelled and then stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It pressed down on her chest, as if the whole village had gone still at once. Claire whispered to herself, "I'm not imagining this." She reached for her recorder, pressed the button, and promised she'd follow those voices to their source. Tomorrow. Morning came gray and silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy in your ears. Claire stepped outside, notebook in hand. The village looked harmless in daylight. Children chasing each other across the snow, old men mending fences, women hanging laundry that froze stiff in the wind. Everyone smiled when they saw her, too quickly, too wide, as if rehearsed. "Welcome," one man said, tipping his hat. "Winter Hollow doesn't get many visitors." His voice was warm, But his eyes never left hers, as though he was measuring her, deciding something. Claire smiled back, pretending to be at ease. "I'm writing a piece on mountain communities," she explained. "Traditions, history, local legends." At the word legends, the man's smile twitched, just for a second. "Nothing special here," he said, then walked away. But Claire knew better. She'd spent years digging through lies, and Winter Hollow was covered in them. She made her way down the crooked street, past the church, its wooden steeple leaning to one side, past the bakery, where the smell of bread was almost too sweet. Finally, she reached the edge of the village. And there it was, Mercy Lake. A wide stretch of dark water framed by bare trees. Its surface rippled gently, though the air was still. Snow clung to the banks, but the water itself, not a trace of ice, in the middle of winter. Claire knelt, dipped her fingers. Cold, yes, but not freezing. Almost alive. Behind her, a voice spoke. "You shouldn't get too close." She turned. An old woman stood there, wrapped in heavy wool, her face lined, eyes sharp. "Why not?" Claire asked, forcing a smile. The woman's lips pressed tight. "People fall in." Then, after a pause, "And the lake never gives them back." Before Claire could ask more, the woman walked away. Fast, almost fearful. Claire wrote the words down quickly. "Never gives them back." That night she returned to her room, unease creeping in. The voices came again, clearer this time. Whispers rising from the floorboards, filling the air like smoke. She pressed her recorder to the wall and froze. She could make out words, not just sounds. "Help us." Claire's skin prickled. The voice was faint, desperate, and impossibly real. She pulled the recorder back, checked it. The words were there. Proof. Her heart raced as she whispered into the microphone. "They're not legends. They're people." But people from where? And why were their voices trapped here? She barely slept. And when she finally did, her dreams were thick with water. Dark, endless water. And hands reaching up from beneath the surface. The next morning, Claire decided to push harder. She carried her recorder and notebook into the heart of the village. Every smile, every nod, now felt like a mask. She stopped at the bakery, where the smell of warm bread drifted into the icy air. The baker, a heavy man with flour on his apron, greeted her cheerfully. "You're the reporter," he said. "What do you think of our little town?" Claire chose her words carefully. "It's peaceful. But I hear stories about the lake." The baker's hands froze mid-motion. For a heartbeat, his cheer slipped. "Stories," he repeated. "Just tales to scare children." Claire leaned forward slightly. "I heard something last night. Voices." The baker's face darkened. He wiped his hands, leaned closer. "Best to forget those voices, miss," he whispered. "They don't belong to you." Before she could respond, he turned his back, signaling the end of the conversation. Claire left, unsettled. Every time she mentioned the lake, their kindness cracked. and beneath it was something sharp, something secret. By afternoon, she wandered near the church. Inside, candles flickered despite the daylight. An old priest stood at the altar muttering prayers. When he saw her, he didn't smile. He just stared. "You shouldn't ask questions here," he said quietly. His voice trembled, not from age, but from fear. Claire swallowed. "What's in the lake?" The priest closed his eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, almost in a whisper, "It keeps us safe. It keeps Winter Hollow alive. And we keep it fed." Claire's heart pounded. Fed? Fed with what? The priest looked at her, and in that look was a warning, a plea, and a resignation. Before he could answer, the church door creaked open. 2 villagers stepped inside, watching. The priest fell silent instantly. Claire knew. He had said too much. That night, she locked her door. Her mind raced with fragments of what she'd heard. Federal voices, never gives them back. As she lay in bed, the whispers came again. Louder now, clearer. "Help us! Help us! Help us!" She sat up, recorder in hand. But this time, the whispers weren't just around her. They were inside her room. She felt the floorboards tremble, as if something massive moved beneath the earth. And then, a knock on her door. 3 slow, heavy knocks. Claire froze, staring at the handle. It turned slightly, stopped. And from the other side, a man's voice spoke. "You're asking too many questions, miss." Silence followed. But Claire knew. They were watching her now, and she was running out of time. The next morning, Claire packed her things. She had one thought: leave. Get out before the whispers, before the knocks, before the villagers closed in. She slung her bag over her shoulder and hurried to her car. Frost clung to the windshield, thick and stubborn. Her hands shook as she scraped it off. The key turned, the engine coughed, and then nothing. Dead. Claire tried again. Again. Silence. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement. 3 villagers stood at the edge of the road, watching. Not moving, just watching. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed her phone. No signal. Claire stormed back into the inn, demanding answers. "Someone touched my car." "Who?" The innkeeper smiled too softly. "No one here would do such a thing." "Perhaps the cold, yes?" Her voice was gentle, but her eyes told the truth. This wasn't an accident. They wanted her here. That night, Claire made a choice. If she couldn't leave, she'd find proof. Something undeniable. Something the world would believe. She followed the narrow path toward the lake, her recorder in her pocket, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The forest pressed close, trees twisting like black fingers. Every snap of a branch made her flinch. And then she reached it. Mercy Lake. It stretched out in front of her, still as glass. Moonlight slid across the surface, pale and cold. She crouched by the water, whispering into her recorder. "This is Claire Morgan. I'm at Mercy Lake. I can hear them." The whispers rose again. Not faint now. Strong. help us. It hurts. Don't let them take you. Claire's breath caught. She leaned closer, and that's when she saw it. A pale hand, fingers breaking the surface, clawing upward. Her scream echoed through the trees. Behind her, footsteps, torches, voices. She spun around. Dozens of villagers stood at the tree line, faces half hidden in shadow. The innkeeper stepped forward, her smile gone. You shouldn't have come here. Claire's flashlight shook across their faces. Every single one of them was silent, waiting. And then the water moved. Waves rippled outward, though no wind stirred. A deep sound rumbled from beneath, like the growl of something ancient waking. The villagers knelt, every one of them, and the lake answered. The water churned. Bubbles rose, thick and black, and then something broke the surface. A shape, huge, wrong. Claire froze. It wasn't a man. It wasn't an animal. It was older than either. A head surfaced, gray, slick, with eyes like molten stone. They burned, but not with warmth, with hunger. The villagers bowed deeper, whispering words Claire couldn't understand. Their voices blended with the whispers from the lake. The sound was unbearable, like 1,000 cries pressed into her skull. The creature rose higher. Long arms, too many joints. Hands with claws. Skin stretched like wet paper. It looked at Claire, straight at her, and the whispers stopped. The innkeeper stood tall now. Her voice was clear. Tonight, Mercy Lake accepts its gift. The outsider. Claire's chest tightened. Her knees buckled. No, she gasped. 2 men stepped forward. They grabbed her arms, forcing her toward the shore. She kicked, screamed, thrashed. The recorder slipped from her pocket and landed in the dirt, still running. Her voice spilled into it. Her screams, her words. Someone, if you hear this, don't trust them. Don't come here. The villagers dragged her closer. The water reached for her shoes. Cold, unnatural. The creature leaned forward. Its mouth opened, impossibly wide. Rows of teeth. An endless dark inside. Claire's heart pounded. Her voice shook. You don't need me. I'll tell your story. I'll make the world fear you. For a moment, silence. The villagers froze. The creature tilted its head, as if listening. Then, with a roar that shook the trees, the lake surged forward. Water crashed around her legs, dragging her toward the abyss. The water swallowed her knees. The villagers tightened their grip. Claire thrashed, clawing at their arms, her nails tearing skin. Hold her, the innkeeper cried. She belongs to the lake. The creature leaned closer, its eyes glowing brighter. It opened its mouth again, and the whispers returned. Louder this time. They filled Claire's head until she thought her skull would split. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred, and then her fingers brushed something in the mud. Her recorder. Still on. Still capturing everything. A spark of hope cut through the terror. If she couldn't escape, maybe her voice would. With a surge of strength, Claire twisted free from one villager's grasp and swung the recorder like a weapon. She smashed it against the other's head. He fell back, dazed. The innkeeper screamed, "Stop her!" Claire stumbled toward the trees, water dragging at her legs. The creature lunged, a massive hand slicing through the surface. It missed her by inches, claws carving deep trenches in the shore. She ran. Branches tore at her clothes. Mud sucked at her shoes. Behind her, the whispers turned to a roar. The lake boiled. The villagers chased, their torches lighting up the night. Claire didn't look back. She couldn't. If she did, she'd never move again. Her chest ached. Her throat burned. But she ran. Somewhere in the darkness, the recorder slipped from her grasp. It landed in the underbrush, its red light still blinking, still recording. She didn't notice. She only knew one thing. She had to get out. Claire burst onto the old road. Her legs barely carried her, but she didn't stop. The forest thinned. The sky lightened. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine hummed. She stumbled forward, waving her arms, screaming until her voice cracked. The headlights swerved. A horn blared. The car screeched to a stop. A driver jumped out. "Jesus, lady! What happened to you?" Claire collapsed at his feet, gasping, shivering, her body caked with mud and blood. "Winter Hollow," she whispered. They tried to..." Her eyes rolled back. Darkness claimed her. She woke in a hospital bed. Bright lights, beeping machines. A nurse by her side. "You're safe," the nurse said softly. "You're in Ashford General. You were found on the road last night." Claire tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. Her throat was raw. Her chest ached. "My recorder!" she rasped. "Did anyone find it?" The nurse frowned. "I don't think so." Days later, Claire gave her statement to the police. She told them everything. The village, the lake, the creature, the sacrifice. The officers exchanged looks. One wrote in his notebook. Another shook his head. When she finished, they closed the file. "We'll look into it," they said. But she saw it in their eyes. They didn't believe her. Weeks passed. Her wounds healed, but her mind didn't. At night, she heard whispers in her dreams. The sound of water lapping against the shore. A voice calling her name. She told herself it wasn't real. Just trauma. Just nightmares. But deep down, she knew the truth. One evening, a package arrived at her apartment. No return address. Inside was a small, mud-caked recorder, the red light still blinking. Her hands trembled as she pressed play. First came her own screams, the shouts of the villagers, the roar of the creature. Then, silence. And finally, a voice, deep, inhuman. It whispered her name. Claire. She dropped the recorder. It hit the floor, still playing. She backed away, her chest tight, her breath shallow. Outside her window, she swore she saw ripples moving across the pavement, as if the city itself had become water. The world would never believe her. The police would never return to Winter Hollow. The villagers would go on living, safe under the protection of the lake. But the whispers had followed her. The creature had found her. Her story wasn't over. And Winter Hollow wasn't finished with her.